how do we move, if we want to, from being single to being married, and how does God guide in all of that? That's what we're on this morning. Sorry, I'm going down with a cold, so the voice is down. I could now do the Heineken advert,
Probably.
Well, no, it's Carlsberg, isn't it?
Probably the best lager.
And that sort of thing. Let me pray and stop being Orson Welles. Father, thank you for what your word has taught us about singleness and marriage this weekend. Thank you too for what Anne and Gordon and Suze and the example of others have taught us, just as importantly. And please help us this morning to think, in the light of all that, how to conduct ourselves in going out. In Jesus' name, amen. A friend of mine was a minister in inner city London, and he met this wonderful Cockney character called Len, who had been married to his wife Maria for 50 years. And he asked how they got together, and Len said, I won't do the Cockney, but it comes in at the end of the story. He said, I met Maria at a dance, and we courted for a year, and I still wasn't sure, and we courted for another year, and I still wasn't sure. And then one day I walked past a church near me, and I thought, I'll go in, I'll say a prayer about this. So he said, I sat down, I said a prayer, and then I looked up and I saw the writing at the front of the building, and it said, Ave Maria. It was a Catholic church, Ave Maria. And Len said to my friend, some people tell me that's coincidence, but it was enough for me. Well, I doubt that would be enough for most of us. So how do we move from being single to being married? How does God guide in that? Well, heading 1 on the outline, how to think about going out. Like I said on Friday, our culture's largely lost the link between going out and marriage. By and large, it doesn't think going out is to explore the possibility of marriage. And, I realise some of us will probably have started going out, without really thinking about it like that. You may be going out just because, a friendship kind of almost by itself took that next step, or because you just felt you wanted a boy or girlfriend or whatever. If so, you are where you are. I don't want to make you feel, that wasn't a good step. I hope this will help you start thinking, how do we conduct this? Even if we hadn't thought about much of that before. But if you're not going out right now, can I plant what might be a very new thought in your mind, which is that going out should be with the possibility of marriage in mind, and that the aim of going out is to get to know someone well enough to be able to decide about marrying them or not. Now, the Bible doesn't give us a blueprint for moving from singleness to marriage. It doesn't explicitly say anything about going out. So we've got to apply Bible principles to something the Bible doesn't address. One principle is that in God's eyes, the end point of developing a special guy-girl relationship, assuming the wheels stay on, the end point's got to be marriage, even if that possibility is way off. That's one principle. Another principle is that God wants us to be very careful with one another, which means remembering that, going out as you move beyond sort of early teenage years has much heavier emotional implications than just dating as 14 or 15-year-olds. It carries much bigger risks of disappointment and hurt. So I just want to plant the thought that dating like 14 or 15-year-olds, not really thinking about it, dating because it's just a kind of herd activity, is not on. So that's the maybe new thought I'm planting. But I'm only saying the possibility of marriage needs to be there in view. Christian blokes who take this on board can then put themselves under massive pressure of thinking, I've got to be all but sure that we would end up getting married before I ask someone out, because otherwise I run the risk of disappointment and hurt. But you cannot be sure or anywhere near sure before you start going out. The point of going out is to get to a point of being sure one way or another, sure enough one way or the other. And you cannot remove the risk that it might end in a no. Equally, you can't remove the risk that it might start with a no. That's the risk the guy takes, isn't it, when he asks a girl out. The only way to remove risk is to take no initiative, and that will get you no nearer marriage. Can I say to the guys, it is a good and godly concern to think, I do not want to end up disappointing and hurting a girl, but however careful and thoughtful you are, you can't guarantee that when you take an initiative. And the girls know that, and they know that by saying yes to being asked out, if they do, they're basically saying, I'm prepared to share this risk. And that is what going out is. It is a shared risk. And can I say to the girls that if a guy takes an initiative that you decide to say no to, please do that as gently and considerately as you can. The blokes are more fragile than you might think. We blokes, it knocks us. But if it's a no, you must not feel guilty about that. These knocks and things, that's life. And then both of you just need to adjust and get beyond the short-term awkwardness of that, and resume, being part of the same peer group and thinking, fine, that doesn't need to kind of mean that we can't have friendship going forward. So next bullet point, if you're not already going out but thinking about it, here are a couple of good questions to ask. One is, do I want to get married? Because if the answer really is no, right now I'm happy as I am, I'm not looking for anything to happen, I just want to say I don't think it's considerate to go out with someone for maybe a long time. You ask them for a year or two of their life, and then say, actually, I don't want to get married anytime soon, so I think we're going to have to stop. That's not considerate. The other question to ask is, do my circumstances make going out unwise, or at least pause for thought? For example, you might be a first-year medic thinking it would be at least 5 years before I could see myself getting married. So do I want to try and sustain a relationship from now till then? Now, I've deliberately chosen that example because I and Susan and others have married friends, Andy and Charlie, and they met pretty much on day one of Freshers' Week and started going out then. Charlie is a medic, so they went out for more than 5 years. You can do that, but they needed to be really wise. They needed to keep the relationship really low-key, really unintense, really unphysical. You've got to play that right, otherwise you're going to be breaking up after a couple of years. Another example would be if you and the person on your mind are both graduating this summer, and you need to think about the wisdom of where you're both going to be if you start something now, whether you want to get into a long-distance relationship like that question last night. These are not right-wrong things, are they? You just got to be wise. Okay, next heading. How does God guide in all of this? The answer is in two main ways, and the first is by his sovereignty over everything. In other words, his ultimate control over all circumstances and people and the decisions they make. So if you ask a girl out and she says no, that's sovereign guidance. If you went out for a while but one of you became unconvinced it was going anywhere and called a halt, that's sovereign guidance. That broken engagement I mentioned, which I think that made me put relationships in a locked box called dangerous for about the next 10 years. In a sense, I think that contributed to God keeping me single, certainly for the next 10 years. That was under his sovereignty. And like I say, I look back on that chapter, which began very painfully, as a fantastically fruitful chapter of single life and ministry and so on. These things are all under God's sovereignty, so he guides us by his sovereignty. The other way God guides is by speaking to us through the Bible, and we need to trust that it's sufficient, by which I mean God has said in it everything we need him to say. Although it's important to add, one thing he says is that we need to consult others for their wisdom. So we need not just what he says in the Bible, but what others can say by way of wisdom in this area. But I think most of us at times struggle to trust that the Bible is sufficient because it doesn't explicitly answer our questions, like, should I go out with so-and-so? And you flick through looking for the verse that says yay or nay in vain. It's not there. So you could just say a prayer like Len, flop the Bible open at random and find the psalm that says, you shall go out with joy and be led with peace. And then you think, who do I know called Joy? That's obviously what David Holloway did. The fact is, the Bible doesn't answer all our questions explicitly, and it doesn't make all our decisions for us. But next on the outline are the two things that God does do for us through the Bible. He draws the moral lines inside which we're to stay for our good, and he gives us wisdom to help us use our freedom within those moral lines. So next bullet point. We face two types of question in life. There are type 1 questions like, should I jump into bed with my girl or boyfriend? And the Bible does explicitly answer that question, no. So the Bible decides the matter for us, and before we act, we can be 100% sure what's the right thing to do, stay out of bed. And we're simply left with the options of obeying or disobeying God, right or wrong. But then there are type 2 questions. These are the ones that are much harder to deal with. For example, should I go out with Joe? Or down the tracks, should I marry Joe? Should I propose? Should I accept? And the Bible doesn't answer those questions, which is why you can never be 100% sure or anything near it when it comes to a type 2. So when I was wondering, am I going to propose to Tess? I looked in vain for the Bible verse that said Ian Garrett should marry Tess Rishbeth. So whereas with type 1 questions, the Bible decides for us, with type 2 questions, we have to decide. It's our decision. And the Bible gives us wisdom for making the decision. So type 2 decisions are not right versus wrong, they are wise versus unwise. And we saw Paul sort of modelling that in 1 Corinthians 7 yesterday. So they're saying, should we stay single, get married? He didn't try to make the decision for them, did he? He left them free, but he said, here's the lines, of right versus wrong. Here's some wisdom. It's your decision. What do you want? But Paul was assuming that a healthy Christian wouldn't just be thinking, hey, well, I can do anything I want. Next bullet point, healthy Christians will be thinking, we should use our freedom in order best to serve God's purposes. So there on the outline is the football pitch of life, which if you've been to Catherine and Gordon's seminar, they had one in Technicolor. It was fantastic. But I think they nicked it from me. And through the Bible, God draws the moral touch lines that he wants us to play within. For example, the touch line of sex is for marriage only. And through the Bible, he gives us wisdom to use our freedom by telling us the goals that we should aim at so that we can then work out, where should I be on the pitch and what should I be doing? And the twin goals are godliness, in other words, pleasing God by doing his will, and the gospel, playing our part in spreading the gospel and building up the church. So over the page and next picture, how does that pan out with going out and marriage? So there's the outer circle that God has drawn through the Bible and that a Christian needs to stay inside. So if I'm a Christian, here it is again, he wants me to marry someone of the opposite sex. Here's one I've not mentioned before, but it's the forbidden degrees of marriage in Leviticus 18, who's not a close relative. For example, I can't marry my sister. Who is free to marry and who's a believer. So anyone inside that outer circle would be a right choice in God's eyes, whereas anyone outside would be a wrong choice. Now, one of those begs the perennial question, is it wrong for a Christian to go out with someone who's not a Christian? Again, the Bible doesn't explicitly answer that question, so weigh what I'm saying. It does explicitly answer the question, should a Christian marry someone who's not a Christian? 1 Corinthians 7 verse 39 says no, as we saw. So if you now go into reverse and back up to the question, is it wrong for a Christian to go out with someone who's not a Christian? I think it's going beyond the Bible to say, yes, it's wrong, but I think it's perfectly right to say it's not wise, it's not best. Now, for all I know, some of us may be in that situation, in which case, like I said earlier, you are where you are, and you need to think, how to handle that. If you're not yet going out, I'd want to say, if you're aiming to do what is best in God's eyes, I don't think you should start going out with someone who's not a Christian, because if going out is with a view to possible marriage, why would you start going out with someone who, if everything stays as it is, you can't marry? I know the obvious answer is, but they might become a Christian along the way, to which the obvious counter answer is, what if they don't? I know that you'll say, well, I'll call a halt at some point, but you're getting more and more emotionally invested, and it's getting harder and harder to do that. That's the unwisdom of it. Look at my circles picture again. Anyone inside the outer circle would be a right choice of marriage partner, but within that you need to make a wise choice. So for example, I know one Christian woman whose friends were suggesting she go out with this guy, and yes, he was of the opposite sex and free to marry and Christian, but he was a really immature Christian compared to her. And really not going anywhere spiritually. And so she said to these friends, no, I don't think so, which was wise and brave and trusting, because there weren't lots of people on her horizon. Whereas you can be so worried, as Anne said yesterday, about finding something that you tell yourself, anyone making even slightly Christian noises will do. But someone who's going nowhere spiritually, or someone who everyone but you can see is really not a Christian at all, will not be the spiritual partner God wants you to have. And you'd be better off with good singleness. So what does wisdom say? It says there needs to be enough attraction and chemistry. In theory, you could marry anyone inside that outer circle. That would be right. But like I said yesterday, having blown away the myth that marriage is built on attraction and chemistry, we mustn't go to the other extreme and say it doesn't matter. We mustn't be super spiritual. So, for example, that broken engagement disaster I had, one reason why I was drawn to the girl and thought we'd be good together is, we were working together in Christian work. But marriage does not equal working together in Christian work. You need to want to go to bed together and find one another consistently attractive and da-di-da-di-da-di-da. And the Old Testament love poem, Song of Solomon, says this area of attraction and chemistry matters. It's about two lovers and their courtship and their marriage. And for example, she says to him, "Behold, you are beautiful, my beloved, truly delightful." So there's nothing scraggly there. He knows that trackies are for the gym, not for life. And he replies, "As a lily among brambles, so is my love among the young women." So there has to be enough physical attraction. You need to be able to affirm the other person like that. I think that's one of the lessons of the Song of Solomon. We have to be able to affirm the other. She needs to be told, "You are lovely, you look lovely." She needs to be romanced. So guys, here are some lines from Song of Solomon to tuck away for future use. Your hair is like a flock of goats leaping down the slopes of Gilead. So I don't know, maybe she hadn't washed it for a while. She was looking a bit scraggly that day herself. Or here's another one. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep that have come up from the washing. Remember, this was before toothpaste. So wisdom says there needs to be attraction and chemistry. But again, remember, the media is feeding us with totally unrealistic images of physical appearance. If you make that your standard, there won't be many candidates. Remember also that it's ultimately commitment, plus the way that marriage helps you fall in love more with the other person, that keeps people together. And that answers the question people often ask, what if I marry and then, I meet someone more attractive? And the answer is you will. There are always going to be men and women around you who are at least as attractive physically and personality and da-di-da as your spouse. But the commitment of marriage, the closure of that, will help and discipline you to have eyes for them only. And the whole context of marriage, the sexual relationship, the living together, is deeply bonding. And where that's happening with faithfulness and love, it keeps your hearts on one another only. So you don't need to worry about that one. In that sense, marriage works. But next, wisdom says marry someone who's godly. In other words, definitely a Christian, not just making vaguely Christian noises that you're talking up in your own head. A real growing relationship with the Lord that's obvious. So I've heard it said, marry the most godly person who's willing to marry you. There's much more to it than that, but there's a lot of wisdom in that. For example, the portrait of the noble wife in Proverbs 31 says, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, by which it means transient. But a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised and by implication to be sought. Then wisdom also means asking, what does the Bible tell you to look for in a wife, husband? Start learning that. Start your list. For example, is she a woman who fears the Lord? Proverbs 31. Does she have the physical modesty and gentle and quiet spirit of 1 Peter 3? Can you see her respecting you and welcoming your leadership? Does she enjoy and want children? Or for him, is he Christ-like? Is he sacrificial, gentle, responsible, humble? Does he listen and take an interest in others? Or is he always talking and being the centre of attention? Does he see leadership as serving others rather than being self-serving? Do you respect him and his walk with Christ? Can you see him being the dad of your children? But lastly, under this heading, wisdom also says, remember, it's not just about finding the right partner, it's primarily about being the right partner. Okay, on to heading 4, initiating going out. I touched on the idea of headship in marriage yesterday, and I quoted that definition that male headship is where in the partnership of two spiritually equal human beings, man and woman, the man bears the primary responsibility to lead the partnership in a God-glorifying direction. So, for example, I should be initiating with Tess, that we pray together, we do family Bible time, and so on. And wisdom says, I think, that pattern of the bloke initiating should be there from the start, because that sets the dynamic of the relationship, and it helps the bloke know his own mind better. Whereas if the girl asks the guy out, one problem is that down the tracks, when the guy hits one of those inevitable moments of doubt, he might question whether he really wanted the relationship or whether he was just talked into it. And I think it's best for the girl's sake to avoid that source of doubt. You want him to be as sure of his own mind as possible. So guys, you need to initiate. As I've said, that always involves risk. You can't eliminate risk. Perhaps we can reduce it. One suggestion is before making a move, it's wise to talk about your thoughts to one or two people before you make a move, who know both you and the person you're thinking about, who can say what they think, either by way of encouragement or by way of caution. The next thing I'd say is, if possible, get to know that person more without yet taking the risk of going out. If that's possible. If you're becoming interested in someone and you're in the same friendship circle, the same ministry circle, working on the same camp or whatever, you can do that. But at some point, to take things further, men, you're going to need to take the initiative. But women, you may be able to help them get to the point of taking it. So you may have heard me tell before the story of some friends of mine, Richard and Rachel. When I first got to know them, they were both junior doctors. Rachel wanted to get married, but no one was initiating. Richard had caught her eye. She knew that he and I were friends, so she came round one day and quizzed me about him. What's he like as a Christian? Is he really a Christian? Yes. Does he have a girlfriend? No. And she asked me about what he was like, and he was a sort of chaotic junior doctor living in a complete mess. And so she and her housemates began to have him and others around. So again, the wisdom of doing things corporately, it wasn't sending desperately strong signals. Began to have him round for supper and invite him to things they were doing in groups. This went on for months, and he just thought it was kind of humanitarian relief and compassion. And then the scales fell from his eyes, and he suddenly sort of thought, I like her, I like Rachel. So anyway, he then came round to me and said, what do you know about Rachel Duncan? I think I'm going to ask her out. And long story short, they got married, and I was round at their house. I was best man for them. I was round at their house a year or two later, talking about whether I was going to go out with Tess, sort of agony, and Richard said, well, Ian, you've got to pursue a girl like I did. And Rachel's mouth fell open. She said, did you really say that? She said, do you know how much legwork I had to do to get you to the point of pursuing me? So the point is, without taking the initiative, which I don't think is helpful, you can do things that might help him take the initiative. The next thing that's going to help in this is to work at a healthy atmosphere for friendship between the sexes. And like I said yesterday, you've got a great opportunity to do that in this peer group and in CU peer group. A few thoughts. I think that means we need to avoid giving signals we don't intend. Now, I don't know where you think the signal lines lie, and you probably don't. That's the whole problem. Where exactly do we begin sending signals or not? I think we know that if a guy here texts a girl and asks her for a coffee on her own, that's getting into signal territory. If you're walking from a lecture and a guy says to you, you're a girl, do you want a coffee from Greg's? That's probably not, is it? Low budget, unromantic. Kind of, you're there anyway. But it's not crystal clear, is it? So all I can say is be considerate and thoughtful about avoiding giving signals. For a healthy atmosphere, we also need to avoid reading signals that are not there. That's the other side of the deal. So in this peer group, which I think is a really, healthy one, I want to say, please cut one another some slack. So that, any of you can sit down next to, another student supper or strike up a conversation at the back of church over coffee or check whether you're okay walking home after church. And signals are not being read into that. You've got to cut one another some slack. Otherwise, everyone dies a death of paranoia. Everyone's worried that the slightest friendliness or show of concern or just being fun is signalling. The other thing is, please avoid gossip. One student in JPC said to me recently, he'd asked a girl for that first coffee, capital T, capital F, capital C. And later on social media, another Christian had posted, just seen so-and-so in Costa with so-and-so. Okay, no comment needed. Avoid gossip. Over the page to conducting going out. As I've said, there's no blueprint for this in the Bible, so you need to be weighing everything I'm saying. I'm just trying to pass on conventional wisdom, I suppose, that I think is gleaned from all sorts of things, books, my experience, lots of other people's experience, talking about this over the years. So first off, I want to say, read or listen now to something good on going out, even if it seems way off your radar. Next, I want to say, going out should not involve sex. If you understand and accept what we saw yesterday, you'll agree with that. And in addition to saying that sex in going out is wrong, it also won't help with the whole aim of going out, which is to get to know the other person. Because what is going to help you get to know someone better? An evening of kissing and cuddling, or an evening of talking? The other thing is that the more physical you get, the more guilty you'll feel about inappropriate behaviour, and the more confused you'll be about the relationship. And you'll begin to think, maybe this relationship isn't good, so maybe we should split up. Whereas it's actually the way you're conducting it which isn't good. And that needs to change if you're going to get anywhere. Another perennial question is, we get the message that sex is out, but how far can we go? Which is an unhelpful question, because we may really be asking, how close can I get to sin without actually sinning? In which case, we've already decided we're not going to try and trust and obey God wholeheartedly in this area. The question to ask is actually, how far can we stay away from sexually inappropriate behaviour? So look at 1 Corinthians 6, verse 18, next on the outline. Flee from sexual immorality. How far can I run? The other reason why how far can we go is an unhelpful question, is that it assumes this absolute distinction between actually having sexual intercourse, that's sex, and anything physically less, that's not sex. And that distinction is a false one, because there are a whole lot of physical intimacies that belong to sex, which are way back from sexual intercourse, but they are designed to build towards it. As one book I read helpfully puts it, there's outer course, which is designed to lead to intercourse. And you've got to draw the line well before those intimacies, because those intimacies, they are like an escalator taking you up to the sexual intercourse floor. And it's just not wise or godly to get on the up escalator while telling yourself you'll turn around and come down well before the top. Ages ago, there was no one there in John Lewis. And I did wonder, is it possible to go down the up escalator? And it wasn't. And I was glad no one saw me. Anyway, again, you need to weigh, but I think we've got to draw lines at a level that, frankly, the world will laugh at, and possibly you will laugh at. So, for example, Tess and I said, no kissing on the mouth, only brief hello and goodbye kind of hugs, not sitting there on the couch hugging, that kind of level. Guys, it's your responsibility to get you and a girlfriend to agree those lines. Girls, you need to remember that usually this is much more of an issue for the guys, and that if you are just sitting there and his arm is around you on the sofa, you're feeling just close and affirmed, he's feeling extremely sexually aroused. And you need to pull him up on any crossing of boundaries and not be complicit. I don't know any Christian couple, even the godliest, who didn't transgress their boundaries in some way. And when you transgress your boundaries, you have got to admit that to one another and reinstate them. What Satan loves to make us think is that once we've broken our boundaries, that's it. We now have to conduct the relationship at a lower level of physical holiness. There's no going back. That is a lie. When you break your boundaries, admit that to one another and reinstate them immediately. And what will help most in that area is just not to spend time on your own in private. I know you need time on your own, as well as with others, but go for walks, meet for coffee in cafes. Only sit in the living room of your houses, not one another's bedrooms. Maybe don't even be in one another's houses without other people there. Spend plenty of time in groups with friends and so on. And can I add, be careful about holidays. I don't think a boy or girlfriend should ever share a room together or a tent together, however clear their boundaries are. One, because it's asking for temptation, and two, because even if you behave yourself, what's it doing for your witness? What's the non-Christian world assuming you're doing? And if you tell them you're not, they'll say, yeah, right. Next thing, if you're going out, guard against getting so emotionally bound up with each other that you can't ultimately make a good decision. This is tricky, if not impossible. But one book on this talks rightly about growing and guarding. So growing in friendship, but guarding against getting too emotionally involved. So that he or she becomes your only confidant. You bare your soul about everything. You drop all your other friendships and put all your emotional eggs in this basket. That is really not good, because as and when it becomes wise not to carry on, you're going to find it very hard to stop. And I look at some going out, and it looks to me almost like kind of quasi-marriage, if I can put it that way. And it shouldn't be anything like that. In particular, I'm not sure a lot of praying together and spiritual discussion is helpful. It can be far, far too intimate. And in particular, you have the opportunity, if you're going out, of just constant contact, morning till night texting and so on. And I think that is profoundly unhelpful. I think there needs to be real distance in the closest of going out relationships. How you work that out, it's not easy. Next, if you're going out, seek accountability and advice from older, wiser Christians you know. I've already said it's wise to talk to someone before you start going out. It's also wise for someone to be aware of how long you've been going out, so they can ask you at an appropriate time, what's happening, how's it going? So if I'm aware of people in JPC who've been going out for a year or so, I'm likely to tap the bloke on the shoulder one time, say let's have a drink or a coffee and say, how's it going? Because actually this could just go on and on and on without you actually bringing it to a decision. It's also wise to tell someone else what physical boundaries you've set and to give them permission to ask you regularly, are you sticking to them? Let me say something on talking about your past. Going out is about getting to know the other person, and at some stage that will include talking about past relationships, including sexual mistakes. And as I said on Friday, this weekend will have made all of us, me included, conscious of our struggles and our failures in this area. That's why I reminded us that on the cross, Jesus anticipated and paid for all our sins, and all means all. There's nothing we can confess to him that he's unable or unwilling to forgive. But those things still have consequences. So they may mean that you are no longer a virgin. They may mean that you have a habitual struggle with pornography. At some point in going out, if the wheels stay on, you're going to need to talk about those things. Obviously not straight away, not on the first coffee at Costa, but at some point. And that takes courage, it takes processing. If things are to carry on, it takes the giving and receiving of forgiveness, and that all needs to be done very gently and carefully. But I also want to say the fact that past sin still has consequences doesn't mean we're trapped or defined by it. I could introduce you to numerous couples at JPC who can testify that messing up badly or being hurt badly in the past hasn't stopped the Lord giving them a really positive experience of marriage, or indeed a really positive experience of singleness. Okay, then we come to making a decision. The ultimate aim of going out is to make a decision. Do we, don't we get married? And a lot of Christians misunderstand how that gets resolved. I've often tapped blokes on the shoulder, asked how's it going after a year, 18 months, and they say, I'm still waiting to be sure whether God wants us to get married. And the answer is, that is the wrong question. This is not about what God wants, this is about what you want. God has told you what he wants in his word. He's told you that if you marry, he wants it to be someone of the opposite sex who's free to marry and who's a believer. And he's told you he wants you to be sexually holy and do what's best for godliness and the gospel. So now it's over to you. What do you want? That's the question you've got to answer in the end. Just look at 1 Corinthians 7 verse 36 down on the outline, just that snippet. What does Paul say in the end to the men who are trying to resolve, do we, don't we, go ahead? He says, let him do as he wishes, what he wants. And this is so important. At the end of it all, the crucial question you've got to answer is, what do you want? Forget the fact that your girlfriend or boyfriend is really keen to carry on going out or get engaged. Forget the fact that your parents or your friends think he or she is great. They're not the ones who are going to be married to him or her. The question is, what do you want? And in one sense, it's a very lonely decision. And it may be hard because you're not sure what you want. You may be wondering, do I really love him or her? What do I really feel for him or her? And on the one hand, I want to say, if and when you know that your heart really is not in it, it's just not what you want, please don't let pressure from others or fear about future opportunities stop you from calling a halt. On the other hand, I want to say questions like, do I really love him or her? What do I really feel for him or her? Are often not that helpful. I agonised over that with Tess. I guess a lot of the other married blokes here similarly did. I got into a real sort of emotional quagmire over that. The Bible's question, however, is, will you love him or her? Will you decide to do that? And the two questions which helped me out of that quagmire were, do I want to get married? To which the answer was yes. And would Tess be a good person to marry? To which my answer and my friend's answer was yes. But the decision may be hard because you know what you want, but you're anxious about such a big decision. And that's where we need to trust God, that, as Augustine says, God enables what he wills. So if I go ahead and get married, he will enable me to love the other person and grow in love. And you won't be 100% certain or anywhere near it if and when you decide to get engaged. Remember, you can't be with type 2 questions. The time that I was finally 100% certain that Tess was the person God planned for me to marry was when I woke up the next day on the first morning of the honeymoon. Okay, because then I was married to her, and I knew from the Bible that it was God's will that I remain married to her. That was the first time I was certain, after it was too late. But lastly, what if it's a no? What if a relationship ends? I want to say, remember, it's always a shared risk. There is no guarantee. I want to say, that's why the way we conduct going out is so important. The aim is to do it so that if it is a no in the end, we don't need to look back and regret the way that we've conducted ourselves. We need to aim so that we don't need to regret that we've said too much verbally or physically, that we said what we didn't mean at the time. So, for example, I never said to Tess, I love you, before we were married. I just didn't think I could or should with integrity. And I want to say that responsibility to care for one another continues after a no. For example, in creating space for one another, in a shared peer group. You may need to drop out of some things for a bit for the sake of the other person. Responsibility and care continues even after a no. But I also want to say, under God's sovereignty, in God's economy, absolutely nothing is wasted. If we are godly and we are teachable, a relationship which ends in a no can be sanctifying, can make us more like Christ, can strengthen our faith. Above all, can just cast us back on the Lord to find in him our identity and our value and all those things that we've thought about. Now, I'm sure I haven't covered everything you might have wanted covered. I'm sure on what I have covered that I've left you with questions, I've left you with things to process. So I want to say, keep processing, keep asking questions, keep weighing what I've said. Please only believe and act on what you're convinced is a right understanding and an application of the Bible, especially in these wisdom areas where, no one can authoritatively draw the lines on signals or X, Y, and Z. But the last thing I want to leave you with is believe in the goodness and wisdom of God in this area. It can often feel you're frustrated, you're hurt, you're disappointed, you're waiting, and you doubt the wisdom and goodness of God. But just Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6 again. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight.